All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host. And on today's episode, we're hopefully going to have a special guest. So we did this live. But the thing is, like, everybody that we bring on is actually in construction, actually runs construction companies. So bear with us, right? For all of you out there, you know that life happens, projects happen, and all that kind of stuff. But first, before we get too much into this, Matt, my blue collar badass of a co-host, how you doing, man?
I am doing great, Dylan. It's warming up here in Michigan, which is nice. The last couple of days have been kind of a sloppy mess, but we're getting through that. The sun's starting to shine a little bit more, and my pipes that were frozen last week that prevented me from being on the show have thawed out nicely without bursting. So things are good.
Yeah, man, it's been like in the 50s here, and then
Nice.
yeah, I mean, again, being in the mountains, so I'm at this interesting elevation, right? I go 10 minutes down the hill, and it's like it was 70 yesterday, right? 75, sunny, like beautiful blue skies. Go 10 minutes up the hill, like it's ski weather, right? It's 35. It's perfect for skiing, and I think last week they got like another foot of snow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we've been pretty darn cold for the last few weeks. We spiked up to, I think we hit 45 on Tuesday. Last night, though, we got down to negative 17. Today we're back up in the mid to high 30s. So it's enough to get rid of some of the ice dams on my roof, which is helpful. I keep waiting for my gutters to fall off. It's that time of year, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the beauty of construction, right? And just being across the country, everybody deals with weather in different ways. And one thing, like while we're talking about weather, so again, my background, electrical engineering, I did power classes. Like power is my deal, what I went to school for. Knew that kind of going in, like lived off the grid in high school. So I totally understand like renewable, sustainable energy, even though the majority of our power still came from a diesel generator, right? Like that was the backup. That was the real charge. But we had a windmill, we had hydro in the winter. Living in Oregon, we got 120 inches of rain a year, which really happened in like 6 months.
Wow.
It's being on the Oregon coast. There's really two seasons, wet and dry, because you're in like a temperate rainforest, effectively is what it is. So With that, hydro was great in the winter. You had a pretty good stream of water, and then wind was the other thing. But the other thing with wind is we got very high wind gusts. So it was not uncommon to get 100-mile-an-hour winds with gusts up to like 130. So with that, like wind can be like problematic. It actually we had the blades on our windmill weren't like huge, right? They were like 3-foot blades, but they'd bend enough to where they would hit the pole and then like they snap.
Oh, wow.
Or you'd get speeds high enough where you need to put like the brake on to pause it. But with that, you would end up they break the sound barrier. But all that's to be said, and like within the last couple of weeks, right? You had Texas that has they have all these windmills. They got frozen up, so they had to get de-iced and everything. And then with Texas's power grid, the other thing that most people don't know is Texas. So there's 3 big interconnects in like North America. There's West Coast, East Coast, and Texas is kind of on its own like grid system. So in when Texas has problems for power and all that kind of stuff, it isn't easy to connect everybody. So with this extreme weather, it's always important to kind of note how that happens. So you had a big production problem with windmills and all that kind of stuff. And then you had Texas is kind of on its own grid. So then you had interconnects, which means power then has to come through these other big systems. So then you can have power outages. because Texas is kind of its own island. A lot of that's to do with like the Rockies coming through and stuff too, and just where Texas lays. So like geographically, it's a little different than everybody. But that's like one of the other things. Not only is Texas like powered by a ton of windmills, but also like there's these other kind of grid and larger like electrical system things in play. So anyway, just on the weather topic, I wanted to bring that up since that's been in the news here lately.
It was really quite the perfect storm down there. I'm glad to see they're finally thawing out a little bit. We, up here in Michigan, it seems like since I was a little kid, we haven't received a whole ton of snowfall annually. This year, however, so usually what we get is we'll get a couple inches, but then 2 days later it melts. And then a week later we'll get a couple inches. Well, this year we haven't had that melting. So we actually have been building and building. And there was a day last week we had snow drifts at a project of mine that were up to the doorknobs. So we couldn't even get in without shoveling. And what that did, it's a pre-engineered metal roof building. So on Tuesday, when it got so warm, we had basically what looks like an avalanche coming off of the roof of this 30-foot tall structure. And we quickly found that there were some areas in our masonry control joints where the caulk didn't go all the way down to grade. And I don't know if you've been following along, but we're installing 20,000 square feet of high-end maple wood basketball court right now. And we had water literally gushing in through the control joints, and it got within a foot of our brand new unfinished maple floor. But my superintendent got it. He was running around with shop vacs, and it could have been a big mess, but we avoided it luckily.
What's up, guys?
Hey,
Andy. Our modern day tradesman. And all right, so guys, we just for everyone listening on the audio here later that's not tuned in live with us, I want to intro our modern day tradesman. So Andy Aranda has been in the construction industry for 24 years, which is awesome. We've got a veteran of the industry, and is the CEO and owner of Pure Plumbing out of Las Vegas, which, totally different weather we're dealing with here across the country, and father of three, and runs his business, Pure Plumbing, again with his wife, Alexis. He's also launched the brand, the Modern Day Tradesman, to bring awareness to the trades, which you guys know that we're totally all about. That being in the trades, being a blue collar badass is a wonderful thing, and more people should at least consider the trades as a career path, as it's a great opportunity for so many people. Everyone can have a shot at the American dream by being in the trades, and they just need to find their purpose, their why, what they're going to do. So we're super excited, Andy, to have you here on the show, and welcome, man.
Man, great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on. I had having little complications with my computer this morning, so bear with me. But I was listening to you guys a little earlier talk about everything going on in Texas, and the funny thing is we've been looking and kind of following everything that's going on in Texas, and I've had a lot of people calling me this week just to ask me, hey, look, man, do you got crews you can send down to Texas? We're in Austin. I can't seem to find plumbers anywhere. And so long story short, we're looking into everything and licensing in Texas. And turns out right now they're basically saying, hey, come into Texas. If you're a journeyman, master plumber, or you have a business, we will give you a temporary license just to get things done. So it's just interesting to see what's going on down there right now.
Wow. That's incredible, man. So are you going to send some crews down there?
I mean, we got our license down there today. So, I mean, that could be, you got to take advantage of the opportunity. And you know what? We could possibly put together a crew to go down there. It just depending on the needs and stuff. I think I'm going to touch base with a few people that I know down there to see what the demand is. And of course, like moving anything or setting something up like that. I mean, you have to move fast, right?
Definitely. But you got to figure out some logistics very quickly too.
Yeah, definitely, man. And one crazy thing that people don't think about is right now, like, well, I mean, things were frozen, and in the plumbing industry, you have to worry about when it's frozen. You got to worry about what happens when it thaws out, because that's when you start to see, bursted pipes, drywall. You start seeing drywall damages. You were talking about the wood floors you were putting in, or
Yep.
for that court. I mean, you're going to start to find a bunch of things once the snow melts. But I've spent some time in Chicago, so I know what this snow can do in the cold weather. So something that I'm familiar with.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually had that jotted down in my notes. I was poking around on one of your profiles the other day and noticed you're a big Cubbies fan, and I was going to ask you how a guy from Las Vegas becomes a Cubs fan, but now it kind of makes sense.
Well, it's crazy, man. I was born in Henderson, Nevada, right? And my mom's family is from Henderson. And I'm not talking about the nice part of Henderson. For anybody who's been in Vegas, it's the older part of Henderson. And not the most desirable place at the time, but since then Henderson has grown into a big, beautiful place. But lived here till about 5. My mother got married. We moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I grew up, from 5 years old to about 21 years old there. And from there, that's when I moved to Chicago. And you talk about change, culture change, big city life, small town guy moving to a, city like that. It was a big shock, but I wouldn't trade the experience for anything, because that's what really developed me into the trades. Not only just in plumbing itself, because my family, my background and my family, we have a family business in Santa Fe that I learned from. So I grew up in the plumbing trade. But out there in Chicago, we were building houses. I mean, we were working in the Bucktown Wicker Park area. Sorry about that. And we were knocking buildings down, building them back up. A friend of mine out there's a developer. Back then we were young, and we were young guys with a contractor's license. So it's crazy, because out there in Chicago, the application for the license out there was, well, if anybody's willing to insure you, you can have a license, right? So I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? So I mean, the insurance company is going to do their due diligence to make sure they got the right guy, because obviously they don't want to take a hit, with somebody who's inexperienced, right?
Right.
So we started doing a lot of stuff out there. Started with like kind of small projects, started getting into bigger projects, and through all this process, man, I really did learn a lot. Knocking buildings down, building them back up. You're dealing with brick and mortar. You're dealing with footings, basements. Anybody wants to know, like, the importance of making sure a basement is sealed properly from the outside. So you're not having problems with like snow and moisture and water and stuff like that. That's a perfect place to learn that. So, my experience out there was great, because I didn't know what it was like to live, obviously, in a big city, to build around structures that were so close to each other. And also, man, everything out there has to be deep. You're talking about a water line out there is like 5 feet. We're out here, I think we're like 12 to 18 inches.
Wow. That's wild. I'd never thought of it that way. I actually grew up right outside of Chicago. I've been in Michigan since I was in middle school, but yeah, deep foundations to me are when we have to drive piles, 30 feet. The 4 foot frost footings and 5 foot water mains is just normal on this side.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's just a lot of different type of plumbing out there. When I got out there, gosh, we were, you had never even really thought about using plastic pipe anywhere. It was all, cast iron, and it was all copper work. Even some of the drain work was copper work. So, the transition from being out there to coming to Vegas at the time I did, getting back into plumbing out here, in 2009. It was completely different. I was like, man, it's so much easier out here. than it is, back east, And for anybody, who has ambitions moving back east, that's great. It's cool. You're going to, get a taste of the big city life. But if you're from the West Coast, you will come back. You will come back. You'll come back to the nice, dry, hot weather.
Sure. I don't know why I'm here sometimes when it's, last night was 17 below with the wind chill.
Oh, man. And where exactly are you at?
So I'm in Southeast Michigan. The office is in Brighton. We're about 30, 40 minutes north of Detroit.
Oh man. So yeah, that,
Yeah.
you get that lake effect too.
We don't get so much lake effect, but we just get cold. I was telling Dylan before you popped on, we typically get that couple inch snowstorm every week or so, but it melts in between. Everything just goes to ice. Whereas this year we've actually had snow on the ground for 2 months now.
Oh wow!
It's finally starting to melt up a bit, but that comes with its own challenges too.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest, and I would say, the experiences, when you're going in when you're in the trades, right, and different facets of the trades, and you go to a different region, you're learning different codes, how people do things. So I always encourage people, go get as many experiences under your belt as you possibly can. And that was my 20s for me. My 20s for me was, I knew plumbing, experienced plumbing all my life, got into construction, learned construction, building spec house in Santa Fe. Long story behind that. But yeah, built my first spec home. And me and the partner I had that were building the spec house, I told him, hey, you know what? We could build a spec house, but you know what? I want to work for the contractor that we hire that's going to build the spec house. And then I'll hire myself and my family as the plumbing company so I could do the plumbing in it. So my goal was, well, I could get the plumbing done cheap because I'm going to do it. I could also learn how to, I could plumb my first house solo and get that experience. And then I can also get the experience laying out houses, footings, building structurally. And it's funny because, the builder was like a very old school guy. So, they have like power nailers. No, we aren't using power nailers, man. We're hammering nails. So how many guys, these days that are, anxious to build a house with a hammer and nails? It's much, much different type of experience.
For sure.
So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of my background doing that. That's kind of how I got into construction. But I've always loved, I don't know about you guys, man, but in the construction field, there are a lot of facets and avenues to get into that are really fun. There's just so many avenues you can get into. And I think, with my brand, the Modern Day Tradesman, what I want to do is I just want to highlight different areas, well, gosh, not even just to show everybody, but for my own personal interest as well, is just to highlight like what guys are doing out there. If you're going on a job site and you're seeing some crazy spiral staircase and you're wondering, man, how do these guys do that? You guys ever wonder that? Go on a job and you're like, how did they accomplish this?
Especially wood. Wood is always the thing that gets me. Like metal, I can like see how that gets formed, but wood, like, and those like big spiral banisters or anything like that, I'm always amazed.
Yeah, it's wild. And the beauty of the further you go east, the more you find like really intricate woodwork and true craftsmen. And, through my experience going to Chicago, I met this old Irish guy and, he kind of taught me like a lot about carpentry and woodwork. And, I really learned a lot. So, you ever want to learn woodwork or anything that's really complex, being on the East Coast is where you want to learn it. Because you don't see that stuff anymore, especially here in Vegas. You see a lot of spec homes, a lot of homes that are built for profit, I call it. And, you don't really see it unless you go into like super custom homes. But man, out there, you see it everywhere.
You see it a ton, especially up in New England. But actually one of my steel guys recently sent me a link. There is a college or university, I think it's in South Carolina, and it's called like the American School for the Building Arts. I'm butchering the name. It's something similar to that. And they're actually teaching people old school building techniques. So there's videos on their website of kids doing plaster work and welding and wood carving and stone carving, and it's pretty neat to watch.
Man, I gotta look that. I gotta look that up. If you get the name of that, look that up. Let me know about it, because that's something I want to share. Because I think a lot of we gotta start getting kids out of high school learning some of these really intricate trades, right? In order to elevate like the trades itself. I mean, home building stuff. Because I mean, out here, if somebody wanted to mimic a house from the East Coast out here, you're probably shipping dudes in.
Mm-hmm.
You're shipping dudes in. You know what I mean? But yeah, interesting stuff out there.
And that's one of the big things too, is that you've hit on it a few times, is knowing that with a trade, right, with a skill set, you can travel, right? Just like traveling to Texas, or if you have a very unique project that you can bring people in for it, right? Or if you have a high enough skill set, right, in carpentry, in masonry, in stone carving, right, that you're now able to travel to do these super unique projects for having that type of skill set. So it's something I think that often gets overlooked, and like how often people travel, like linemen for, electricians, right? They travel all the time. And in so many other fields, you have so many people that do continue to travel for work, right? You're never going to be without it. And you might be, gone for 2 months, but then you can always come back home to, continue working wherever. It's kind of a, as the seasons change.
Yeah, no, totally. For anybody who needs like a variety, right? And for anybody who requires a variety of different things, like being a lineman is probably the best thing, right? It's funny because I just, I was just on a podcast with a buddy of mine in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this guy was a lineman, and, long story short, his wife had gotten sick. He had to stop doing it because he had to be present home with his kids. So now he has a podcast dedicated to helping tradesmen become better fathers, because what he recognized is, man, he spent a lot of days out, didn't get to spend a lot of time with his kids. When he came home, the kids didn't know what to do with him, because they were never
Dad's been traveling.
Dad's been traveling. So it's really weird. So he kind of breaks down how a lot of tradesmen, not only linemen, but a lot of tradesmen have that problem because you're working long hours, you may be traveling. So I think it's good that more people are getting out there and talking about this, because I think it's things that tradesmen do have to deal with, man. Because I know in the service industry and what we do in the service end of the trades, we don't stop till the phone stop ringing. And so now, right, plumbers, probably electricians in Texas, and even contractors, like these guys are, they're probably working 24/7 to restore power, to restore water to homes, and to restore properties, right? So it's just what comes with the job, right?
It is, and there's a give and take. What's the name of your buddy's podcast? I'd like to check it out.
So his podcast is the Show Up Dad.
Okay.
Yeah, the Show Up Dad podcast. So yeah, it's pretty good. He's got a lot of really good speakers. He's interviewing a lot of people. And for anybody watching this, man, you guys should go check it out, because I'll tell you, like, all of a sudden out of the blue, he contacts me. He's like, "Hey, what's happening, dude?" He's like, "Man, I got this, thing going." And God, I haven't seen him since we were like in our 20s. And the last time we saw each other, it was kind of weird. We're partying, having fun, Yeah. I was in school. He had just gotten back into town and stuff. So, reconnecting with him has been great, because he alone has helped me realize a lot of things about myself and with business, because, with business, we get so focused on what we have to do to support the family that we forget that what the family actually needs most, right? And that's our attention. So how do you leave the work home and be 100% available to your kids to give them the attention and what they require, right? Because we just can't buy their love, And I think a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm going to make the ultimate sacrifice for my family. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to make as much money as I possibly can. I'm going to set my family up so they can do whatever they can. But then years go by, your kids are teenagers, and they're like, Dad was never home. What is it for? You know? So I think a lot. I'll go for it. Sorry.
I guess this is a good question too, because, you know, like in your 20s, in, you know, really anything, learning the skill is what you need to do, right? You can work as many hours. You're typically not tied down, right? Most of us, you know, at least these days, right, don't get married till our late 20s, but you can grind through your 20s, learn a skill, pick up all of those things that you need to be great at what you do. And then it's, you know, as kids, as a family, like, so I just got married last year, so kids aren't quite on the horizon. Yeah, thank you. On the horizon yet, but for that, it's setting yourself up to be in a place where you can be home. You know, that might be coming into the office or being in different roles to where you're not having to answer those service calls, you know, at 10 o'clock at night or 2 a.m.
100%.
So I guess, how have you maybe looked at your team into elevating guys into those positions, you know, as they come through, or at least making them aware of like, hey, I did this thing, right? I was just like you. I grinded. I worked, you know, 18-hour days or more, you know, as many guys are doing right now to like you said, restore power, you know, clean up everything. But how do you look to kind of elevate your team, and or at least show them like, hey guys, you don't have to like work that hard, you know, your entire career. There are other things that are important as well.
I think really what it comes down to is, I think at a young age, you need to find, you know, young men at a young age, and you need to get them trained, right? So really, we've got to be effective as business owners of identifying who wants to be in the trade, who's committed. You have to let them know how important it is, whatever they do, find out what they want to do, stick to it, and commit to it, right? That's one thing my grandfather told me. He's like, hey, look, you know, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what you want to do. Next thing you know, you lose 10 years in whatever it is you decide you want to do. You're 10 years behind. Well, those first 10 years were probably your most productive in a physical trade. So what's the goal? Well, the goal from a business owner is to get kids in from high school that identify they don't want to go to college, right? Give them a career that they make 6 figures at. Train them how to do their job well. Once they learn how to do their job well and how to perform the plumbing tasks or tasks as an electrician, alignment, or whatever it need be, once they have that solid foundation, they can start building on those skills. Well, there's there's many different parts of the trade, right? You got the residential end, you got the commercial end, you got the service end. And those are 3 very, very different facets of the trades itself, right? So you get to identify, you know, what is it that I'm good at? Am I an introvert? Well, if you're a little bit of an introvert, but you love the hard work, you know, the working end of the trade, right? You could be a craftsman who just doesn't like to talk to people. Well, there's a place for those people, right? Those people you can't put them, you know, in front of a customer selling a job. You know, you've got to get a guy who's really good at one, talking to the customer, identifying the customer's needs, and then understanding the trade enough to know what they're talking about, to line the job up and set the guy who likes to do the work up on the job. So if I could recommend anything, you got to identify where it is you fit in the trades, and you got to roll with it. Well, as business owners, right, we need to discover our talents within our team. So if we're discovering the talents within our team, then we can better forecast the vision of where we see them going within our organization. And of course, you know, you guys know this best, right? You've got to grow the team large enough so they can all fit inside the dream, right? I think we've heard that from Ed and Andy, you know, plenty of times. Yeah, definitely. So you've got to raise the ceiling so these guys see themselves growing within the organization. Because if you don't cast that vision, well, you know, you're gonna have a hard time growing it and getting better. But, you know, I think you just got to make the best of your years at a young age and learn as much as you possibly can and get as much experiences in as you possibly can. Another thing I think that people need to think about too is you can't be scared to try new things. You know, I think a lot of people say, oh, I don't know how to do that. Well, I can remember countless times where I didn't know how to do something, but I knew how to get the resources of how to figure it out. You know, like we're in the information age where you can look it up on Google, YouTube. You could pretty much find any resource anywhere, or you could find somebody to ask them how to get it done, right? So as long as you know where to find those resources, I think you can grow yourself enough into a position of leadership, you know, if you do it right, and you won't be having to run calls at 40, 50 years old, you know, working 24 hours. But I think you're going to have those people too that are comfortable doing that. Like they want, you know, my dad is like, gosh, he's almost, gotta be almost like late 50s, 60 maybe. And he's still plumbing, you know, he's still plumbing, man. But he's a simple guy. You know, he knows his plumbing. I mean, he's not able to do the stuff the young guys do, but you know, you can be a senior plumber and you can be showing these guys and training these guys how to be good, and you can make a huge impact doing that by just showing these guys how to, you know, make the money they can be making in the trades.
Absolutely. And then you're the mentor, right? And so many young men and women coming into the trades, they need that mentor relationship because, you know, it's competitive as hell out there. And,
oh yeah,
you know, especially in the trades, most people don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to do what they're looking at. So you've got to learn fast. And some of it's going to be trial by fire, you know, dangling your feet over the flames. But some of it comes from that mentor relationship. And when you can find the old guy, or, you know, the guy's been doing plumbing or carpentry or whatever it is for his entire career, you got to figure out how to extract that knowledge from him. But once you can do that, you can set yourself up for a world of possibilities.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think you just gotta, you know, I think we as leaders in our industry, right? We need to identify what it is this next generation needs, and we've got to mentor these guys into areas that they're going to be successful. So, you know, I just like high school has, you know, a guidance counselor, right? That's going to kind of set them up of, you know, where they're going to go after high school. I think you almost need to be like a construction counselor and be able to see where these guys' talents are and then guide them the right way. So, you know, if you're a young guy getting into the trades, first you got to identify what makes you happy, why you're doing it. I mean, I never realized why I loved being in the trade so much. I just love talking to the people, right?
Sure.
I love talking to people. I love the different scenery change, you know, that you're in a different house every day, you're meeting new people. And you know what the best part was that I loved about it was the fact that I had a sense of purpose. Like, you know, these people were relying on me to go in and fix a very, you know, a problem that was bad. So whether it was leaking, you know, whether it was like sewer water all over the house, you know, drains failing, you know, I felt like the hero coming in to save the day.
Sure. And you're bettering people's lives because of it. You know, I started off building houses, and, you know, it wasn't an emergency situation usually, but, you know, when you build something like that and you can hand over the keys to a family or to whoever, like, you just built this person a home. You know, that's some powerful shit to get up in the head when, you know, you just made this person the place they're going to live and call home for the next 20, 30, however many years. And even now I've switched in the last couple of decades to the commercial side. I get the same feeling building buildings, right? Like now I'm building the place where these guys and these ladies are going to work, and they're going to earn a living to provide for their families. And, you know, it just keeps going and going and going there. And it just, I think it goes back to what we've been hitting on. There's so many opportunities out there in our collective industry that it's just a world of possibilities. But it leads to a question that, you know, Dylan and I have talked about a lot. And I'm going to ask you, Andy, for your take on it. But what do you think is what do you see as the biggest issue facing our I'm going to call it our industry, so Dylan's on the design side, I'm on the commercial side, you're on the service side, but at the end of the day, we're all construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as the biggest issue facing our industry today?
Well, I think it's the stigma that comes behind blue collar work. I think it's the stigma. I mean, I can remember as a kid, and I talk about this in some like my brand stories and stuff like that. I was a kid, the kid in the shop, at work with my parents, watching these plumbers, come into this warehouse and buy stuff, and I was looking at them, and I was like, man, I don't want to look like this guy. I don't want to look like this guy. He smells like he's been drinking. He looks like crap. He looks like he's beaten up and worn down. And even my dad, man, the guy would be working till like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And, because he was working to try to provide for us, we were a big family of 5, because he was trying to give us the best life possible. He started getting into drinking, and, that's a whole other topic, man. And, there's only a couple of reasons people drink and drink a lot is they're trying to kind of drown away their sorrows and their pain, man. And, I think we've got to get rid of that stigma, but also we got to, as leaders and as business owners, we have got to understand that there is a limit to what we can put our guys through. I am a firm believer, I still to this day, I tell my team all the time, look, I want my guys not getting a call past this time, and I'm not sure how you're going to have to figure it out, but you need to figure out how to make this happen, because I don't want my guys burnt out. I want them to have a life outside of work, and it's a very fine line, like, especially when you're in the service business is, a lot of times you don't stop till those calls stop, but we got to figure out how to make sure that we are taking the right volume of calls to make sure that our team goes home at a decent time. So in turn, going back to the question you're asking me is, how do we change that stigma? Well, we as leaders become better leaders, recognize what's tearing people apart, and we do our best to try to change that stigma in our industry. And, that's the number one thing behind the brand too, is like, we're trying to bring respect back to the trades. Like, what is it that what is it that brings respect? You ever see those, that famous picture of the guy sitting on the piece of steel? Maybe it's the Empire State Building. It's a black and white photo. The guys aren't strapped in. They're just wearing like t-shirts, dude. It looks just like, man, these guys were like 100 stories up in the air. Like, yeah. OSHA probably didn't exist, but these dudes are just badasses up there, dude, just making it happen, where's the sense of pride? I think people were so happy back then to be in a new country, that they were willing to do whatever it took to make a career for themselves. And they really took pride in like creating what is now the greatest nation in the world. Right. But see, now America's in a whole different stage. We're in a stage now is we're the top power. Right. But all of once you hit the top, what's the hardest thing to do?
Stay there.
Stay on top, right? So what is it, man? I think really right now, even in the trades, we need to face the reality, and the reality is this: is not enough young people are getting into the trades, and right now, if you're what supply and demand is if there's a demand for people in the trades, what's going to happen? You're going to get paid, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think we just need to create awareness behind that. If we can create awareness behind it, I think that would be something that we could do to change it.
That's a beautiful answer. So when Dylan and I talk about this problem constantly, I kind of have this vision of this effort I'm coming up with that we're calling blue collar badass, and it's the very same ideal, right? It's the same thing as Modern Day Tradesman, and actually through doing the podcast now, I've met a couple guys who, unbeknownst to me before this, are kind of going down similar but separate paths. And I think awareness is it. College just isn't for everybody. The trades offer a ton of fantastic opportunity where you can make not just a reasonable living scraping by, you can make a killing. And you nailed it, especially right now. If if you come in and you put your nose to the grindstone and you learn and you work, you can set your own price tag pretty easily across the board right now. 100%. Especially if you start learning any of the specialized skills like we touched on earlier. I mean, my God, if you knew how to do plaster work right now,
oh man,
forget it.
And isn't that the truth? Because in my place, I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They have this they have this plaster style called diamond hard trowel plastering, right? You guys ever heard of it?
No, I haven't.
It's like a Venetian plaster, but it's like thick. It's not just real thin, right? But you could literally see your reflection in the plaster.
Oh wow.
That's how it's like glass, right? And it's funny because out here in Vegas, everybody's doing the Venetian plaster, and guys are charging like $25 to $50 a square foot to do this stuff, right?
Wow.
So I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to make money there. And if you're an artist, if you're a bummed out artist who's not selling artwork, struggling to survive, well, how are you gonna, what are creative outlets that you could do in the trade to help you fuel your passion, right? So, I mean, some people might like to make artwork with their plumbing. I mean, if you get online, I think now I've been noticing more and more of what tradesmen are doing. So electricians like to make their line work perfect with their pipe bending, right? That's an art form, man. And I've been seeing it more and more, with what I'm doing right now. And same with plumbing. I mean, I follow this plumber outside of in Australia, and he's literally bending his copper pipe perfectly on his tankless installations. And I'm like, man, we don't do that out here, but it looks so beautiful, man. But what's holding us back from doing it that way? Like this guy, obviously he created he created his artwork within his trade, right? Mm-hmm. So like the trades can be for artists, for creative people, man. You've just got to find out what it is you have to do to make your installations unique, because people pay for unique things
all the time, man. And if somebody goes in the garage and sees this bad tankless water heater, right, and this thing looks like a piece of art, if somebody's interested in it, what are they going to say? They're going to be like, man, who did that work? Yep. I've never seen anything like it. So there are ways you can express yourself in the trade. So that's one other thing that I think we need to highlight here, man, is like, if you like to express yourself in a creative way, join the trades, man. Perfect opportunity. Yeah, that's a great answer. And it's not one we've touched on before. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good viewpoint.
But and another thing too is like, you get a lot of iron workers out there who can weld the most perfect welded joint, right? They've got all kinds of different ways to weld these joints, right? And gosh, I see that more and more now, because my eyes are on every single trade now. So you see all these creative ways that they're doing these things. Well, man, why aren't you doing sculptures and selling pieces of work for $150,000 a pop? You already know how to master your craft. And if you're creative and you like to build things, why aren't you building like works of art? Like, there's no reason why you can't take this thing to the next level, People pay for that stuff,
Yeah, that's a great point. And really, to your point about the guys on the Empire State Building, right? Like, and I've seen some recently where they were like playing golf, right, up 100 stories or something crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the sharing of images, right, of people on a job site, of sharing the beauty, the rugged, the man's man images, and getting them out there, right? Everybody's familiar with the 10 iron workers sitting on an I-beam up 100 stories having lunch, right? That's a very iconic photo. I think that probably got a lot of people into construction for a long period of time. And we just need more of that. I think over the past 30 years, people have been gun shy on pictures, on images, for liability and a plethora of other reasons. Can we share this? Can we put this out there? Is this owner going to get mad about us sharing their building?
They're going to find me.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of stuff. But I think the being entrusting your people that are doing the right thing, that are showing a good installation, not, you know, guys goofing around or whatever, but showing, and not to say that you can't show and share people having fun, but you know what I mean, right? Doing it in a safe, responsible manner, not anything crazy, but getting more awareness, to your point, out there of people actually working, right? Actually showing, you know, what people do on a day-to-day basis, and putting buildings together is a huge part of it. And making not only the guys on that job site and girls feel good about what they're doing, but knowing that, hey, like, this matters, right? It's going to get seen. We're getting seen outside of the people on the job site, right? We're bringing notoriety to what we do, bringing awareness to our trade, this project, right? Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so that they have some ownership, not just to say that they did it, but like, look, here's actually me on a job site, right? Here's me actually doing something, versus just like, yeah, I worked on that. And, you know, somebody look at you kind of sideways and like, really? Yeah. Did you? Did you actually show up?
I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I'll tell you, man, I mean, every project that I've done, you know, is like a notch on my belt, a sense of pride, purpose. And I think that's the one thing you could get from being in the trades, man, is how good do you think those guys felt, right? You know, those 10 guys sitting on that post, you know, what do you think they told their kids? You know, that original photo, if you could say that was my dad on there without bullshitting, you know, guaranteed, you know, that's something to be proud of, man. And everybody needs to feel a sense of purpose and, you know, a sense of being a part of something that's great. And if you're one of those dudes sitting on top of there building the Empire State Building, I think that's probably the pinnacle of like coolness. You know what I mean? Look, I was up.
Heroes are made of.
Yeah, man. And, you know, there are heroes in the trade. And I think we need to highlight some of these heroes in the trade and, you know, give them the recognition, man. I don't know about you guys, but if you ever see the guy with the tattoos, you know, he's an iron worker, the wrench face official guy. You ever seen him?
No.
And he looks scary as hell, man. I don't know. I've been trying to connect with that guy, but I mean, he looks scary, dude. But this guy's doing some badass stuff, dude. And he's on there posting this stuff, man. And he takes pride in his trade. You know, obviously, I mean, he's working on these big towers. He knows his stuff. But I mean, this guy is really getting a lot of attention out there, and he's doing it for the right reasons. And, you know, it's cool to see, you know, guys out there showing that type of work, because I don't know about you, man, but I don't know what it's like to be 50 stories up in the air doing iron work. But I do know if you do post those videos, man, you're going to get some like special ops Navy SEAL dude who's getting out of the military who's like, dude, I'm on it. You know what I mean? Or like, hey, man. Or hey, maybe I'm going to be getting, you know, coming out of helicopters, working on a freaking tower out in the middle of freaking nowhere, you know, to revive power to a town out in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's jobs for people there are people that are crazy enough to do that kind of stuff. So I think I didn't even know that line. I had no idea how in depth or how hard a line job was until I talked to my buddy.
Have you seen them do the helicopter work for big utility? So for everybody out there, like if you've never seen it, just like Google or YouTube, like utility lineman helicopter. So what they do, so they're wearing a full mesh suit, right? It's all mesh metal. It's basically a Faraday cage is realistically what it is. And they sit on there's a little stand next to the helicopter. It's a little platform that the guys sit on, and it's electrically isolated from the rest of the helicopter. And then when they're up there, because they do live, it's all live. So you're working on a transmission line that's 345,000 volts, right? Is what most of those are. Some of them are like 500,000, you know, 500,000 volts, 750, like these big transmission lines. And you have to do that work live, and a lot of it's inspections, a lot of it's just like insulator work, whatever. But they have to do that live because you're on those transmission lines. Like you take down a state, like it's you know you're taking down a big swath of the grid if something fails. So they have to do that work live. But in doing it, so you're on this little platform on the side of a helicopter, you know, at a transmission line, and then they have a little rod that they like shoot over, and it brings them up to the potential of the line. And then they, again, because you have 2 or 3 like parallel conductors, so you're one arm on each, you clip in to the line, and then you literally like hand crawl along the conductors in this Faraday cage. And again, you're not dying because you're up to the potential of the line, but you're out there walking. And then they deactivate, bring the helicopter back up to potential and all that stuff when they go back over. But it's totally like crazy what they do. But I mean, there's a job for everybody.
Well, what's crazy about it is, imagine like these guys have to be sharp, man. They have to be smart. And that's one, this is one thing why, being a tradesman doesn't mean you're stupid, man. Because these dudes, like every mistake that they make has consequences, man. So these guys have to be extremely aware of their every move, which means these guys probably, I'm not sure if they're coming into work hungover, man, because that could mean their life, right? So I think there's a lot of credit that should be due to guys like that, out there in the trade that are doing that stuff, because they do have to be sharp and on their toes every minute of the day. So are you guys who think that, hey, construction is something you get stuck in when you don't go to college or because you're not smart enough? Dude, these guys are intelligent dudes, man. And we're finding out more and more nowadays, like all these guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq after the wars, these guys are the perfect candidates to be getting into the trades, man. And I think that's what we need to be targeting. Is we need to be targeting guys coming out of the military. Reason number one is these guys operate on core values. They know what it's like to work in a team environment. And if they know what it's like to work in a team environment, man, it's just going to be a bonus for you, because that's one less thing you have to teach, right? So these guys are going to be coming onto your team natural as leaders, working under a structured organization. They're probably going to fit into your core values. So I think a lot of what we need to focus on too are, how are we going to get these guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan? How are we going to get them into the trades? What are we going to do with the guys that are the perfect fit to get back into, or the perfect fit for a career in the trades? And how can we better educate these guys on what they can do coming out of the trades to make the money that they need to make? Number one, to support their families and to grow, their life or their version of the American dream,
And what's so important too in there, and you touched on it earlier, is look, there's more to life than just being in the trades. Like everyone, we love all this stuff, everything in construction. We love everything, but there is, you've got family life and you're doing it to support others, right? That's a big piece of why most people are doing this, right? Is to provide a great living and life for the rest of your family. And I guess that might be one question too, Andy, and I don't know how much longer we've got you for here before we wrap up, but with your dad working those long hours, being gone, what lessons really did that teach you growing up?
Man, I'll tell you, man, it made me realize a lot, man. It made me it made me realize, number one, what he did to provide for his family. So, when we're teenagers, we're a little disrespectful. We take things for granted. We don't understand what our parents go through to support us. Well, now as a father, I know that, right? But it also taught me, man, going through that makes me hypersensitive towards that in my business. So I'm able to identify when guys are going through things, right? So when I see guys going through that, of course I want to make sure that they're okay. I mean, I like to look at it as this: is my job is for my team is to help people grow, not only in the trade, but as like better individuals too. And because I saw my dad going through all of these things, like I don't want to be responsible for, possibly contributing to someone's downfall. Right. So, I think I really try to avoid that. And I think, at the time, I think my dad was just like, hey, I got 5 kids. I got to support them. I got to put them to school. My son wants Jordans. I got to buy some fucking Jordans, right? Excuse my language. But, these are all things that like a father is like feels the need to do, right? And that's his sense of purpose is like every man wants to know that they can provide for their family, right? Like if you can't provide for your family, you're like not a man, right? I mean, I think I've always felt like that. I'm like, I got to provide for my family. I got to make sure my kids have this. I got to make sure my kids have that. I think just being hyper aware of that, just maybe really analyze things and the type of business leader I wanted to be. And it made me realize that my job is to educate these guys to be efficient at what they do in a certain time. Like if I have a guy from this time to this time, I need to figure out how these guys can be more effective at what they do so they can make more money in a shorter period of time to get home to their families and not have to feel like they have to work till 9 o'clock at night. And look, guys, I don't have this thing perfected. Trust me, I'm very far from it. But I'm aware of it and I'm constantly working at things that I can do, to better take care of my guys and my team. But
and that's great, man. That's why I suspect you're a pretty damn good leader. I'm 100% confident you're a blue collar badass. You are the modern day tradesman, right? You've got this thing figured out. Perfection's not attainable. Perfection's not attainable. It's the race to keep going and reaching as close as you can that we're all striving for. So hats off to you, man.
Definitely, man. And I know you guys are too, man. I think we all, thing in life is, we're never going to reach the pinnacle of where we want to go. But as long as every day we're striving to get where we want to go and better ourselves and better our teams and make the world a better place for it, like that's all we can strive for, right?
Absolutely. Andy, before we wrap up here, where can everybody find you?
So you can find me at themoderndaytradesman.com. That's my website. I've got videos. I like to share videos to kind of help people out. That's, way I feel, I kind of contribute. I'm just sharing what I've learned with people. I just want to make that available to people. I'm going to be sharing more content, more and more content on there. I also have a line of apparel called the Modern Day Tradesman as well. So, the idea behind that is, where can you go buy cool trades gear? That's cool. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make cool trades gear that guys can like wear and be proud of their trade, whatever it is. So if you're a plumber, an electrician, we got this Modern Day Tradesman gear. So you can go out and rock the gear with pride. So go check that out. We're always constantly coming up with new things and new ways we can educate and kind of bring awareness around the trade as well. So that's where you can find me. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. From that website, it'll take you to all the little facets and areas. So, I could go a long list of stuff, but that's the best way to find us.
Perfect.
Yeah, guys, go check Andy's stuff out. He's sharing some fantastic content on there. And it's a lot of the stuff that we talk about here too, right? It's core values. It's learning how to communicate. It's learning how to be a better person. That's going to make you a better tradesman, able to communicate with, the owners, the team members, the different trades that you have to work with on a job site day in and day out. So again, his stuff is fantastic, highly endorsed. And keep up everything that you're doing. But any final words that you have and want to share with the audience here?
Yeah, guys, just whatever trade you're in, just remember, stick with it, give it your all, become the best at that you can possibly be at your craft, and identify what avenue you want to go within your trade. And, get with a company that's going to invest in you, because, if you get with a company that's going to invest into growing you, like you'll be able to be, what it is that you're striving for.
100% agree with you.
And ask those questions before you hire on. What they're doing. That's it's
100%, man. You got to know what makes somebody tick. You got to know what drives them to succeed. You want to, if you're applying for something and somebody asks you what drives you, you better know what drives you, man, because that's what they're looking for.
Yep. Well, hey, one last thing before we get out of here. another Andrew previous guest of ours, Andrew Zeller, shot us a note during it. It's American College of the Building Arts. It's
American College of the Building Arts.
acba.edu, and they've got a Facebook page now that I've been following. They put out some pretty cool content, and they're doing some pretty neat stuff with their students.
So acba.edu.
Correct.
That's awesome. Perfect. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome, guys. Well, that is this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Again, go out, be the best that you can be, continue to learn, grow, develop all your skill sets, again, in the trades, in design, in construction, in project management, whatever it is that you do in this industry. Go out, be great. And until next time.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it, guys. You guys have an awesome one.